Okay.
Legend.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Very
That's
smart.
better.
We know our shit.
Yeah, see.
Not we know we're shit.
Google Analytics, no problem. Basic machinery, big problem. We'll come to that in a minute. But what's this talk about? Where did this talk originate from? And it came, the gestation of an idea came talking to Google. And Google said, "I want you to come and talk about analytics." And we were like, "Yeah, it's great, we can do that. Yeah, but we don't want you to talk about all that clever and geeky stuff. What we want you to talk about is the things that you did that had a lasting and transformative effect on those businesses." So if you were to go back through all the time you spent and reverse engineer the things that led to positive outcomes, not the tactical stuff, the things that you did with data, people, teams, and processes that actually made them change the way they work or see things or fundamentally alter the growth trajectory of the product. So this is analytic shit that you can do that will have a really powerful impact because we've worked back from the outcomes to the stuff that makes the outcomes happen. So this title could be 11 Analytics Power-Ups that Drive Growth and Insight. But really, what this should be is 11 things that should be in your strategic analytics plan. If they're not in there, then we're going to explain today why that would be a really stupid move. So make sure all of these things are in there today. And if you want to get in touch with me and Charles, all the details are in the slide deck. The slides are already uploaded, so you can download them right now. And, you know, we do skills transfer and training for people. Our job is not to do the work. Our job is to teach you how to do it so that you don't need us anymore. And that's a really important point. But why us then? We're a couple of blokes. What have we got to give you? What's the foundation to all the stuff that we're talking about today? And it's 40 years working with analytics. We worked with log files. We worked with Google Analytics before it was called Google Analytics. And that means we've seen nearly 500 analytics setups, all of which are totally fucking broken, right? And we fixed them. You know, that mistakes are good. Failure is good. The first 3 analytics projects I worked on, total failure. But I've learned from those failures, and so has Charles. So we're going to give you the benefit of that pain. It's hard-won experience, so it's solid. And it's actionable. This is stuff that you can actually do. It's not theoretical. And it's conceptual enough that you can apply it to almost any business. And we've got a whole bunch of resources, models, templates, reports. And we're just sticking in latest article from CMO on solving a tracking problem this morning. But there's a problem here because when we first started out doing this shit, we thought, oh, we're going to be Mr. Wolf.
We thought we were Mr. Wolf. We thought we'd come in, we do the cool stuff. We're not Mr. Wolf, are we? We are Jules and fucking Verne. Because we are on constant brain duty. A quick question, how many of you seen Pulp Fiction? Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, if you haven't, watch it. We are Jules and Verne.
Wait a minute. Who put me on brains duty? This is a ridiculous thing. But in here, we're going to show some examples. And this is real stuff. You know, we can't share the client data. We kind of care about actually being able to work for them again. So we're going to show you models or concepts here, not necessarily... Oops. Let me get that right. Not necessarily the actual live data, so you get an idea of this kind of stuff. And here are all the things that we're going to take you through. But first of all, an interesting bit of audience participation, a little crappy A/B test thing that we can put in here. So, over to you, Charles.
Right. Quick question. You've seen both of us. Who would you trust to park your car? Could we have votes for me? How many of you trust Craig to park your car? And how many of you don't trust either of us? Okay. This was yesterday at Paldiski.
You're getting a bit of a wind noise.
Am I?
That's it.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's better.
I'm at the top of the lighthouse doing some pattern recognition thinking, where's my car gone? Oh, it's in a ditch. And the phone goes. So if I'm at the lighthouse, who do you think decided to helpfully move the car for me? That is why we were late yesterday.
It's just a reminder, not every test is a winner.
I'm on inheritance.
Don't give me the keys.
Exactly. So, inheritance tax. This is not your normal Google Analytics demonstration, presentation. Inheritance tax is that bit where we don't always have the ideal solution. We don't get given a brand new account to play with. We have to take over somebody else's account. That better? No. That better?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's much better.
Right. So when you take over an account, get the history of the account from whoever you can. Now, you might be really lucky. Somebody might have written the most detailed set of notes. How many people here have taken accounts over that has perfect documentation? Wow, there's a sea of hands. Look at that. So you know what I'm talking about. So if there are notes, check them. Talk to the team. Discover the history. So these are things we always look for. How many tags have been changed over the last 2 years? Now, this is really important because when we're looking at historical data, we need to know, were those tags put in properly? If not, that might explain why some of the data is really, really crap. Who updated the analytics? Are they still in the organization? Who made the changes? When were they made? Are you planning to make any more changes to the tags? Because if somebody made a bad set of tag changes last time, let's get in there really early and make sure they don't do it again. And then basically, who owns the analytics? Who are the developers? Who are the product owners? Who has every single touch point to do with the analytics? And then finally, who's actually in charge of the analytics? So whose ass can you kick when it goes wrong? Craig.
Can one of you guys help Charles with his mic? Because it's getting a lot of wind blowing over it. I don't know what it is. Is that? We'll see in a minute.
We'll try now.
Yeah. We can just put it further away, turn it up a little bit. Thank you, Charles. Auditing. Auditing is possibly the most important part of this deck. This is the one thing that if you haven't audited your setup, you don't know if it's broken. This is a philosophical question. Until you've looked, it's a Schrodinger's cat thing. So you've actually looked and audited all your data collection, you don't know whether it's working or not. And we're going to explain why this is a massive problem. What Seymour says here is that basically out of the entire life cycle of your analytics measurement, there's only one place that if you screw it up, it will pollute everywhere else. And that's at the data collection layer. And it's one of the places that hardly anyone checks to see if it's working. What I say about this is that bullshit data will flow like raw sewage up and through every level of your organization. And I've even got a diagram to show what shit flowing through your organization looks like. So if you start off with bullshit collection at the bottom here, and we just pump some raw, untreated sewage instead of actionable, clean data, what happens is you get bullshit collection, which then turns into a set of bullshit metrics. And those become incorporated into bullshit reports, and right at the top of that is some pastel-colored, total massive bullshit Google Studio dashboard. Doesn't it feel good? It looks good, it's lovely colors, but it's built on a complete foundation of layers of shit. And that's the problem, right? You're looking at it thinking, this is real. No, it's not. That's the problem. Data collection is broken for most companies. And Google knows this, although they won't kind of admit it. But I've looked at this stuff, and Charles and I have been through 480 client configurations. And we looked at the stuff that had high priority issues. When I'm talking about a high priority issue, this means that there's something wrong with the analytics that completely skews, pollutes, or transforms the data so that anyone trying to make decisions about this business using that data will be fucked, right? And if 100% of people had medium priority issues, then it doesn't really fucking matter how many had medium or low, did it? Let's look at it a different way. Who had good analytics out of that lot? Less than 1%, right? 3 people. 3 people. We said, yeah, that's not bad.
It's quite frustrating doing an audit for those people.
Yeah.
Because you go, guys, your site's perfect. Damn, I wanted to find an issue to add to our list.
But that's the exception rather than the rule. And there's a fundamental problem known at the heart of this. People say, oh, it's free, Google Analytics, isn't it? That means it's magic and it sets shit up itself. No. Free means you get a basic system. It's unconfigured, it's raw, okay? It doesn't mean it runs for free. If you buy a car and you don't put oil in it, it will stop working eventually. You go, oh, well, that's a bummer. My car isn't working. That's because you haven't done the maintenance, you know? Analytics setups don't run on air. It needs love, investment, money, setup, right? And if you don't have that, then it's not going to work. But the problem that then causes is, imagine if you were Ferrari and you were sort of racing your cars around a lap, but the speedo is all wrong. You know, how are you going to beat the other guys if your telemetry data is flawed, right? So you're trying to compete against other companies, but they've got good analytics data and you've got bullshit. Who's going to win? It's pretty easy. How can you measure your own performance or even the performance of your competitors if the essential data is flawed? And how can your team do their jobs and get some sense of satisfaction if they're unable to measure what the fuck happened after they made a change? And this is because most people encounter this problem. So imagine you own an Audi and your dashboard breaks. And it's an electronic dashboard, it doesn't break anymore. So you say, fuck it, I'll just go to eBay and I'll buy a generic dashboard, right? And I'll plug it into my Audi and all the shit will work. No, of course, because the dashboard doesn't know anything about all the different devices in the Audi and the different sensors. So wiring up your analytics is a bit like knowing how to wire up the dashboard to your idiosyncratic business signals that are unique to you. So the stuff that Tim was talking about earlier on is brilliant. These things are fundamentally important to these businesses. And so you don't just buy a dashboard or chuck Google Analytics at it. You have to actually wire it in properly. And if you don't do that wiring, then essentially your dashboard is bullshit because it's not wired into your type of car or your type of business. In order to solve this, you've got two ways of doing it. You can either hire someone to audit and get me or Charles to do it. There are loads of other people. I can recommend loads of people if we're busy. But here's the interesting thing. Most audits take less than a day. That's right, even the most complicated companies, sometimes 2 or 3 days.
2 or 3 days.
Maximum. But out of all that work, you find out exactly what's broken and you have a plan for fixing it, a prioritized plan. So if you can't afford to get someone else to do it, these are the best self-audit resources on the internet. Get them and do it. Because if you haven't checked it, you don't know if it's wrong. The old Schrodinger's cat. Charles and I also do a lot of automation of this sort of stuff, so we can pull out all the event taxonomies. We can automate pulling out the channel configurations. We can do stuff to audit large-scale setups, so multinational, international, multi-brand sites. You can actually audit large parts of the configuration automatically, and that saves time too. So think about it, a day's time to potentially save yourself, you know, millions or tens of millions of pounds in terms of missing stuff and tracking. But here's the thing, you know, everyone has this problem, right? Even if you're sitting thinking, no, I think our Google Analytics is set up correctly, that's something that remains to be validated. If you haven't checked, that's just an assumption or a guess, a hunch. And you have to prove that with data. So auditing stuff, not just once, but regularly. You know, you do security audits. You know, you have a pen test or some sort of security check every year to mitigate the risk of somebody breaking in and stealing all your data and the reputational risk. But you're not going to do an audit on Google Analytics, even though that contains the risk that you will get wrong data that will lead to bad decisions, which will then kill your company, right? So the outcome's the same. It's damage to your company, but you need to mitigate these risks. And Google Analytics not being set up is another risk that you need to manage amongst many of these. And auditing isn't just a technical discipline. It also requires some commercial skill to understand what the business is trying to do, and also an understanding of user experience and how people interact with tech in terms of the website and the things that they interact with on the page. So it's user experience, business goals, platform, and technical capability. These are all bound up in auditing. And auditing is the easy bit, right? Even if some of you guys have audited or found problems in setups, that's brilliant, right? But then people don't fucking do anything with it. They say, thank you very much for the Google audit. We will now place this in the drawer, and the drawer is emptied every week and goes to the Indiana Jones warehouse, where it dies. And no one will fix any of that stuff. So a year later, you look, and they think, our data is still fucked. So here's some tips. Once you get the audit done, you have to push through the pain. Right, there's actually a pain barrier that you have to go through post-audit. So what we do is we shake out, there's 161 common problems that we see in Google Analytics setups. So we score them. We score them by the impact they are having on the people and the decision-making in your business. How are they actually holding you back fundamentally from using Google Analytics properly? So once we've prioritized that stuff, we actually show clients how that shafts their data. Oh, this is how your data is precisely shafted in great detail. Enjoy. And then the real work starts, because what we're then doing is saying, we are going to work with you now to break every one of those atomic pieces of work down and actually turn it into a project plan, execute them, get them out, right? But it takes months or fucking years to get this stuff implemented. You think, oh, we got it all, we'll have it fixed in 2 weeks. But it takes a long time, and it requires determination, never giving up. So what do we get done first, right? If we find 200 problems on your website, which stuff do we do first that's most important? You know, and what we need, as well as this prioritization, is we need support. So it's great. You say we need to fix all the analytics stuff. Sorry, no development time for 9 months. Right? So what was the point of doing the audit? Oh, we've done a fire audit and the building's at risk of burning down tomorrow. That's okay, we'll leave it till next year. It's a risk that you can't park, right? You don't want to make this stuff go away. But there is important stuff you can do as groundwork here. Get all the stuff prioritized. Make sure that you've got resource and planning. Signed in blood. We will give you X days of developer time for these analytics fixes, but building a direct relationship, not with the marketing people or the stakeholder or business owner that you're dealing with, but direct with the tech and devs that are running the platform. Because you don't want to send this stuff via 2 or 3 people who are going to sit on it. You want to go and maintain a direct relationship with the people who will be responsible for executing this stuff, and that's dev and tech, right? What you can do is help agree a decent testing and release process with them. They'll like that because you are mitigating a risk for them, but it also helps you. It's mutual cooperation, right? Then you can parcel out all this prioritized work. So let's take these 3 things at first, and we'll deliver these. Are they done? Yes, good, right? We've got that out of the way. Bite-sized pieces. You don't give them, whoom, 200 things. There you go. Fix it. What you need to do is make it easy psychologically. You need to psychologically manage this process to actually get the stuff onto the site, you know? And that's probably the most important part of the audit. And celebrate stuff. And when you get it done, say, great, that means that these 3 reports are no longer bullshit anymore, you know? So try and take a positive spin to this. Now, here's the bit that goes with audits. And Charles and I were going to do a live demo today, which is very stupid, but it's going to be too small on the screen.
Never do live demos.
Too small. What we are going to do is record a video of us doing a walkthrough, and we'll post it on the Elite Camp page after the conference. But what this will show you is how do I go about do a walkthrough on my site to check the tagging, and how do I use that to construct models on the site? So walkthroughs are really important because this is where we tear down and inspect the tags. You can look in Google Analytics and, oh, there's a page called Checkout, and there's a page called Add to Cart. But when you look on the site, you find that the add to cart button is firing in the wrong place, right?
Or twice.
Yeah, or twice. So you look in Google Analytics and you think, oh, Google Analytics is telling me that's the add to cart function, but it's not, because you haven't checked when it fires in the front end. So there are three parts that we call the Holy Trinity here. The first is what tags are firing on the page as the user does stuff. They add to basket, they select a size. Does anything fire or go off? This is important stuff to collect. The second part, the Holy Trinity, is the collection. What stuff is actually being sort of picked up in the page? And the third part is how's that data flowing into Google Analytics? So how are the filters and the setup and configuration? So the data that you see in Google Analytics is affected by these other lenses. So unless you put those lenses on to look yourself, you may have a distorted picture. And here's our favorite tagging tool. It's called Wasp. And it can be used for a variety of JavaScript tags. I've used it to debug a whole lot of things. It's great. Google Tag Manager, Google Analytics, event tracking. Some really useful stuff in there. Doesn't do everything. Here are some other walkthrough audit tools that are highly recommended as well. And they're used for slightly different things. But all of these are peeling down stuff like this. So what do we walk on the site? Well, we go in, we register as a guest, we log in, we try all the different options, we take stuff in and out of our basket, we change sizes, we literally peel apart all the interactions on the site and work out what data is being sent into Google Analytics that go with those interaction events. And here are the things, I'm not going to go through all of these, but they're in the deck for you. These are our inspection parameters per page. So as we're tearing down the journey, oh, you're in the basket page now. So what do we look on the basket page, right? We look on this sort of stuff. What data is being sent in event tags, you know? Do the pages behave similarly in terms of tagging? Are there some consistent things that happen across these different templates? What about timing tags? Do you get a tag fire when you scroll down the page? What happens when you go to the basket? How does it all work? And that's the important thing. Walking through it, it begins to build a mental model so that by the time you have gone through the entire site, in your head are these things. Oh, if I go to Google Analytics and I want to create a segment to encircle category pages, I've discovered that the stupid people on this website have two different names for category pages, right? This happens all the time. So by walking through all this stuff, what we're doing is mentally mapping out the data that should then appear in Google Analytics, which we can then go and check all of this stuff exists. So I know what the success page is, I know the different steps in the checkout and how the guest checkout works. But going through that walkthrough exercise is the bit that fills in all of this Holy Trinity, which is what the customer's doing on the page, which is the intersection of product and data, and then there's the configuration of Google Analytics, and then there's the actual tagging data layer and the data that's actually being pushed into Google Analytics. And if you don't look at all three of those when you're checking how your setup is working, you're going to miss stuff. That's why we call it the Holy Trinity. So here's a little tip. If you're doing a walkthrough, what to do is you can add a fake parameter on the end of your URL. So go to your landing page or your starting page in your walkthrough journey, put this fake parameter in there, but you can then create a filter later on the next day to say, give me all of the sessions that have piggle equals diggle in there, and there'll only be one, which is yours. And you can then look in User Explorer, and you can walk through all the tags that we're firing. So now you saw what was happening in the front end. Now you see what came into GA. Do they line up? That's it. You have completed the Holy Trinity.
And in fact, one last tip there for site walkthroughs. Anybody who's got Hotjar or SessionCam, watch those videos and then go, am I tracking that stuff in my analytics system? And if you're not, it's another one. So,
Tim mentioned this one as well.
Exactly. So, early warning hacks. Now, as Craig and I, you may have noticed, we're quite cynical. Some of the times where stuff just happens on websites and nobody thought to tell the analysts. So, this here is Britain's Menworth Hills. Built in the 1950s, it was meant to detect a Soviet missile strike. Great, we have 4 minutes. And what are we going to do in our 4 minutes? Send a bunch of missiles back.
Too late, the Russians are already here.
Too late. The
They're on
question is,
Facebook.
do you have your own equivalent of a Menworth Hills? How do you know things are going wrong on your site? And I want to give you an example. This is the best one we've ever seen for stupidity on a website. So can you spot around, let's see, January, direct traffic just soars. Woomph. Because somebody in the IT department said, I'm bored of having a really boring server monitoring bot that just pings one page and disappears. Let's deploy an algorithmic bot that randomly goes through the site and simulates completely random journeys. Yep. At the end of the 6 months, that was 30% of all the sessions on the site. We came in, we audited it. And what was a bit of a giveaway was the massive spike. See up there? Also the fact it was coming from Zurich, and this is a British travel site on Linux desktops. And the client said, this is a bit embarrassing. I said, your conversion rate's a lot better. You haven't lost any revenue. All you've got to explain is 6 months of your figures are wrong. Now, what could they have done, or what can you do? By the way, how many people here have an early warning system analytics that says something is going wrong?
Woohoo!
Well, okay, it's good. It's better than the last presentation we did. So, there's 4 ways you can do this. Okay, how many people here are using a Google Analytics custom alert? Well, there we go.
Yes!
You've got some of your, that's an early warning system. Because what's it doing? It's telling you that traffic has increased or decreased, possibly by device, possibly by camera traffic. So whenever we go on a site, the first thing we will say to people is, what are your most important goals? Set up a goal for each different device type as a bare minimum. Yep. Has your conversion rate dropped? What's your main KPI? If you want to be really clever, how many people here are technically skilled in JavaScript or AppScript? Okay, well done. You can go away, use the API, build something really clever. I cannot code for toffee at all. I am the world's worst developer. That's why I hire developers. Or what I use is I use a tool called Analytics Edge, which is an Excel plugin which directly goes into the Google Analytics API. There's also Supermetrics, to be fair. I'm a big fanboy of Analytics Edge because what it does, it has a schedule tool. So every single morning for a bunch of clients, I run that report. And if it goes to a certain parameter, it gets emailed off to the client so they know that something's gone wrong in the last 24 hours, not 3 months ago. Or have a dashboard in Google Data Studio and check it. Whichever way you're doing it, you work on the assumption that problems are going to happen, and it's your job to make sure you're on top of them now rather than 6 months later. Now, I've gone through a couple of basic ones, tracking your main KPIs. Here's a couple of other ones we've come across. So how many people here track page load time in Google Analytics?
Smart move.
How many people here hit the page sampling, where you get to the point where Google will only sample 1% of your page? Yep. Zero or Harvard's done one, where if you have enough spare hits, and as Tim said, you have 10 million a month, capture the page load time for every single page on your site, because you can then slice and dice that, and if all of a sudden you suddenly see your page load time massively increase, it's time to go and talk to your host company, your developers. Craig, in a second, is going to talk about his 15-minute models. It's now 3 because we've automated it, but it's 15 minutes, sounds good. And again, build a model, run your own numbers, and then have a running average that, again, will tell you. Now, years ago, we did some work for a hire company, and they launched their brand new checkout, and conversion went down by 25%. Any idea why? Like this. No, simple. We said, have you tested on every single browser? And they went, we might have done. We said, did you test on Firefox? Shows you how long ago it was. No, they didn't bother checking on the one browser that had 25% of the traffic. You couldn't check out on Firefox. So if you're running any website, check against your major models, browsers, devices, and your KPIs. Because if something goes wrong, you know it's going to cost you money. It's about minimizing that loss. So,
cool.
No, I'm data skew.
It's
You've
fun.
had your 2 sections. Okay. So we are going to get onto some good stuff, about the positive stuff, because at the moment we're talking about basically how to mess up. I met Craig when I delivered a presentation. What was it called, Craig? Can you remember? It's called the 35 ways to really fuck up your Google Analytics. Craig walks in, tried to take over. I kind of said, sit down, Craig. So what is data skew? Now, does that picture look familiar to anybody around Christmas time? Christmas tree lights, yeah? You get them out, they work, and there's hours. So data skew is where your data going into Google Analytics is correct, but you need to spend time and effort untangling that data before you can start analyzing. And that means there's less time to do the analysis. The other thing is, you might know that data is correct, doesn't mean the rest of your organization knows that data is correct. They'll look at it and go, well, that doesn't feel right. And we've seen it so many times where people go, well, why don't you use Google Analytics? Well, I didn't trust the data because it had these things on it. So, does your data look like this piece of shattered toffee?
The example for this one is a classic. I sometimes ask clients, show me the stats for your homepage. So they go to the All Pages report, and they pull it up, and they say, yeah, there's the homepage. It's right at the top. Those are the stats, right? And they say, what about the other 4,500 versions of the fucking homepage with tracking code appended to it? So what you've done is taken all your data and smashed it into tiny fragments. So you don't have one homepage that you're collecting for. You now have 5,000 slightly different homepages with different parameters on them. So any normal human being trying to use that report will be looking at completely the wrong data. So if you haven't done any parameter filtering to clean up those pages, then your pages are probably smashed like the toffee.
So these are the most common ones that we see. Now, I really wish I didn't have to put this next slide on, right? Subdomain and cross-domain tracking. Please tell me, everybody here, you're all tracking your subdomains and your cross-domains perfectly, aren't you? Is anybody be brave enough to say you're not? That's good. I like this. Oh, there we go. The other week, somebody rang us, Craig and I, up and said, we've just launched our new website, and we've decided to split our website into 3 separate sections, and our analytics isn't working. We were like, well, did you do the cross-domain tracking? And they were like...
What's cross-domain tracking?
We just assumed the developers would do it for us. No. So the best thing is you can do it inside Google Analytics. Even simpler, you can do it inside Google Tag Manager. Now, this is one we love. Payment. How many people here have had a new payment gateway appear in as their top referring report? Because somebody in the finance department forgot to tell them? So yes, there you go. You're all happy, and you go, what's esecure.com? What's esecure.com? Why is that the top?
Loads of business. Call them up. Yeah, do a deal with them tomorrow.
And then somebody in the finance department says, oh yes, we changed payment provider. Is it important? No, not at all. No, just destroy my campaign tracking. So again, this is where the early warning system comes in. Because you can build a system that says, I know all my main referrers. Give me any referrer that's got more than 10% or 20% of the traffic. It might be perfectly legitimate. It's also really handy for putting all your dev servers on there. So again, it's stopping that breaking. Oh, misconfigured campaign tracking. Human beings who can't spell. Top right-hand corner, we've got top deals, all lowercase. Then we've got top deals, capitalized, and affiliate capitalized. This is from a client. This is from a real client site. This was 6 months of data until they got the tracking right. So, lowercase or uppercase, as long as you're consistent with your campaign tracking, spelling, not much you can do. My favorite is you fine your agency. How many people here have media people allowing agencies to buy media for them and do their campaign tracking? Write into your contracts that every time they get it wrong, they lose a percentage. Trust me, they only do it once or twice. Our record is an agency that did it 4 times, and that was 16% of their billing for that month. Yes? Yep. You'd have thought they'd learned after the first time. So, how many people here are happy with their channel and their content grouping inside Google Analytics? It's running as it should be. Oh, I think they're a bit tired, Craig. They can't be. Okay, so most of the time, Craig and I go in, this isn't working. Now, let's be fair, Craig, we're a bit perfectionists. Yep, so the human beings, it doesn't always work as it should do. The biggest single challenge is is when somebody sets it up, they set it up once, and then they walk away. They go, it's done. Brilliant. I can go and do the rest of my job, and I can do lovely Facebook campaigns. And then it changes, and it stops reflecting what's actually happening on your website. And what is lovely about channels and custom groups is you can customize them to exactly how your organization works. So when people are looking, one of the biggest challenges, as Craig's alluded to earlier, is we might be able to look at the analytics data and we know what's happening. Other people in the organization are going to look at that data and they will misquote the data. Because if you're sending paid search to organic or vice versa, people are getting the wrong idea because they believe your analytics is set up correctly. Now, this is something on the bottom right there, the default channel groupings, is all we've done is we've tuned for a client and said, your organic traffic is going to come to your homepage, your category pages, and your product pages because they act differently. People went, oh, I didn't know you could do that. That's really useful. Now, Craig and I, much as we like to think we know everything, we don't know our clients' organizations as well as they know them. Yep. So rather than say to people, how would you like your channel set up? What we say to them is, tell us about your marketing. Oh, are you doing some paid? So your paid stuff, it's paid social, and its Pinterest is not the same as your AdWords campaign. And sit down and get them to describe in their own words what their marketing channels are and how they perceive the website. Because at the end of the day, it's not Craig and I that are looking at the data for them. It's them.
We have a report that pulls all of the source and mediums. And what we do is we sit down with the client and we say, where does this one go? What about this one? What about this one? What about this one? So you have the buckets and you say, where does that one go? And then we'll get down to a few left that we'll discuss and say, well, we kind of think these ones should go in these buckets. But essentially you've bucketized into channels by sitting down and talking it through with the client. And you said, here are your current source mediums. In future, how are we going to bucketize these so that the channel report actually works? And the same applies for page content groupings too.
Right, as Craig's already alluded to, query strings. And the classic example where we see 4,000 homepages, thank you .mailer, and every other email service provider who puts tracking tags on and doesn't tell their customers it's going to stuff your Google Analytics, because why would you look at Google Analytics when you can look at our lovely dashboards? So, some query strings are incredibly useful. Some are completely pointless from the purpose of analytics. And this wonderful piece of regex, /, pipe, and sign, will show you in your all pages report every single page that you have that contains a query string. And we talked about automation. One of the things I do is I'll go in, I will collect all the query strings, and then I will calculate the number of sessions and page views that contain those. So I say which query strings are potentially polluting my analytics. The record that we have so far is a client who had 357 different query strings appearing. And when we cleaned it up, we left with 3 that were actually genuinely useful. That was over 400 GA filters we had to build to clean it. But it left the client with useful data that they could use. Now, please do not do what's up there with the big red cross, which is the nuclear option, which says, get rid of every query string. And there's a large British digital agency that did this, and I sat in a meeting, I said, why did you do this? And they went, well, the client said we didn't need them. I said, so the client doesn't need to know the promotion codes that were out of date or invalid. And they went, And we have 5 or 6 that were genuinely useful. So we've sent them back to go and do it again properly.
So remove everything unless you've explicitly identified that that parameter is used for analysis. And if you ask people and say, is this used for any analysis? And they're like, no. Then that's fine. You say, right, well, you won't object to us taking it off then. And if anyone complains, that sometimes happens, and they're like, holy fuck, we can't do this anymore. Well, we did ask you, so cover your ass there.
The one thing we haven't gotten here around query strings is, and we were talking about automation, is, so for example, and we'll put it in the slide, is how many of you check for personally identified information in your Google Analytics? When was the last time any of you checked? Okay, how many people here in their Google Analytics have what's called a raw account that has no filters on? Go in there and check for any email. Because last week we discovered...
@sign. Just put @sign in.
Because we discovered a major UK retailer had over 90,000 email addresses inside that account. Their main account was completely clean, but they said it's a raw account, so why would we have checked? You know, you've got to be on top of this stuff. Now, this is going to cause... How many people here know about ITP? That's good. You see? Yep. These audience on top of it. So ITP and Safari, I'm just going to read this. With ITP 2.1, all persistent client-side cookies, i.e. persistent cookies created through document.cookie, are capped to a 7-day expiry. That's the official one. That's Google Analytics. So that says if somebody comes to your site today and comes back 8 days later...
On an iPhone, an iPad, and laptop Safari, they're going to look new.
Yep. If they come back the next day, that's fine. The expiry gets set for another 7 days. This isn't just going to affect Google Analytics. This is going to affect any tool that basically sets it by document.cookie. So it's going to skew an awful lot of tools. So you need to be talking to your vendors now and ask them, how will ITP 2.1 affect it? And if they go, we'll come back to you, you need to keep on their case.
They all need to have a response to this, so press them for it.
So, when Craig and I said we got relevant articles, this article came out. Does everybody here know Simo Ahava? Know of him? Yep.
Woo!
So, Simo naturally, of course, has been working on a solution to get around ITP. We're not going to go into technical details.
No.
Just read it.
Check it out.
Yep. And lots and lots of ITP resources.
These are a complete guide to the entire history of ITP, how it works, how it affects Adobe, and also how to run. If you look at Mike King's article, this will also tell you how to set up a segment, which will give you an insight on how much it's affected you. So the first thing to do is accept that ITP is probably affecting you. Once you go over that, then it's like, how much is it affecting us? And you can create a segment to actually look at how this is skewing your data. You know? So if you need to prove that some work needs to be done on this to solve the problem, like we alluded to earlier, actually show people how this is shafting their data. So you can do some cohort reports that show a massive increase in direct traffic from these Safari visitors, and then that's easy for you to make
We
your
should
case.
point out that we've actually read all these. These aren't just the first links we took off Google because they're at the top.
These are all very, very good articles. Some
And
of them are from...
again, every time you see this here, these are a list of... These will take you to an article or a resource, or this is the good stuff.
Yeah, Paul Cox's channel guide, analytics stuff is brilliant for this sort of stuff. Thank you, Charles. The next one that we want to talk about conceptually is the idea of having polluted data. And Charles and I had initially thought about this. Well, how do we define this? Because how do we explain it to people? Well, data skew is the right data is in there, but it's kind of wrongly set up, or it's fragmented, or it's just pulled out of alignment or biased in some sort of way. But essentially, the right amount of data is in there, but it's just all broken, right? Whereas data pollution is somebody has put some extra shit on your lawn that wasn't there before. So this is extra data. It's not your shit. It's someone other dog's shit, right? And either it's a third party that's doing it, so it could be bot or spam that's pushing this into your site, or you're doing it to yourself. You just haven't noticed, you know. So the problem with this data pollution is it's essentially invisible unless you actually go in and check for it. But it also corrupts all your key site metrics, you know, and it introduces noise into your A/B testing. If you're testing an A and a B, and the A and the B have bullshit data in them, then you're actually going to put a lot of statistical noise into that test. That is a problem, right? We had a client come to us, though, and said, help you guys, our conversion rate is dropping, right? And it's been dropping for a year. And we just thought, oh, it'll be some terrible product or website that doesn't work. But no, it was a data problem. And this is a model that we presented to them about their data. And we said, well, you know, there's some automated bot and spam stuff happening here. These are your customers logging into the website, your website product, which is a SaaS product. But these are all your staff logging in to the same website as fucking customers, right? So the people arriving on the homepage are staff, And out of those staff, most of them are located in the Philippines. So all this data of internal staff, the developers, back office staff, and the outsourced team that's working in the Philippines are all polluting massively the data related to the real customers and prospects on the site. And because it's an expensive product and they're not sending massive amounts of acquisition traffic, basically their conversion rate is dropping the more fucking people they hire in the Philippines. So the first question I asked them, well, how many people you hired in the Philippines in the last year? And they said, why are you asking this question? I said, go ahead, humor me with the detail. And they did. And I said, if you keep hiring people in the Philippines, your conversion rate will drop to 0.
And do you know what caused it? That's because they used a global template for everything. And then the header was Google Analytics.
And they didn't filter this stuff out. And really, if you look at the two models, they were mixing all their traffic in one bucket. We'll put everyone in here, prospects, customers, staff, people in the Philippines, bot and spam stuff, and we'll mix it all up, and then we'll make business decisions based on that slurry. It's horrible.
And they said, how can you fix it? We said, well, the simple thing is take the code out of the template, yeah? Or are you actually selling to anybody in the Philippines? They went, no, of course we're not. Okay, one GA filter, exclude Philippines. Lo and behold, can't be that simple. Yes, it can.
All the automated stuff completely out, the dev and staging stuff in a completely separate tracked view, prospects identified when we don't have any tracking data that tells us they're a customer, but if we know they're a customer on trial or paying, then we keep those in a separate data pool, and then we keep all this shit of internal staff somewhere else separate. That data is useful for analyzing their behavior, but in a different context and for a different purpose. So don't mix all this crap up. This is the problem. You're mixing. People say, we ran an A/B test on our website, and it was addressed to whom? They'll say, to everyone. Like prospects, customers, people who might be customers, but you don't know who they are. Yeah, we just make everyone run the test. So cohorts, if you look at Booking.com, they're not like saying, oh, we just do tests on everyone coming to the website. They test on specific cohorts that they know about, right? And they get that behavioral data back, and they can measure it. Right, so this kind of stuff can screw all your A/B tests. All your A/B tests could be utter bullshit because they have this statistical noise that isn't the real data. It would be like running an A/B test where half the products are out of stock on your website. Basically, the A and B will end up with differing amounts of out-of-stock product items, which will then skew the rest of your test. Right? It's things like that you've got to watch out for. But these are all the common sources. So you haven't filtered out developers, any staging or testing environments, an agency that does loads of stuff on your website or is kind of generating some traffic, isn't filtered out any partners, employees, contractors, other offices of yours outsourced to the Philippines. Then bots and spam will also generate this. If you have any external site performance monitoring tools, not you really need these now. If you use Simo's trick, sometimes people do internal site monitoring and you have people attacking you, trying to scrape your content.
Well, actually, not just necessarily people attacking you.
Yeah.
Anybody who's done SEO,
yeah.
If you run...
So it could be your own crawler. Oh, we crawled our website yesterday.
Although I've got to say, it was quite nice here. So if you've got Screaming Frog, you run it, it will execute JavaScript. It was very nice here that there's a site called Sitebulb, and there is a default option that says, by default, we will not fire the Google Analytics tags. And I thought, thank goodness, actually, somebody's being responsible for once. But that's the minority.
All of these things can contribute to them. You can also have misconfigured tags, and a common one is that we've got 2 tags, or even 3 on the same page. So if you really want to systematically track down all the sources of pollution, one of your biggest things will be bot and spam. And these are by far the best shit. This is the stuff that Charles and I look at to remind us of how to go about sorting this out. And there's a lot of very useful things that we can use to isolate these. And one of our best debug methods, here's an interesting one. If you go into the session distribution report, so number of sessions from those users, right, you'll see a distribution graph, right? And sometimes at the far right of the graph, you'll think, God, there are a lot of people here who have like over 200 sessions in a week. like, why are these guys having so many sessions? And it might be like Tim mentioned earlier on, these are trade buyers. People, if you look at the distribution of the baskets, why do we have baskets with 200 items in there? So you start to isolate these. So go to User Explorer, create yourself a filter. There's actually a segment filter that will say sessions is greater than 200. And then go into User Explorer and look at those sessions. Do they look like automated traffic? Is the time between them almost instantaneous, right? If it was a real user, it kind of looks like real user traffic. So we dig into these, and then we look at these kind of clues: the network, the host name, the bounce rate, the browser, the GeoIP data, and the screen resolution. From those signals, as well as this stuff in the distribution report, we normally get to identify, filter, and fix most of this bullshit data. But you've got to be systematic about it. You don't know if you haven't checked. It's a Schrodinger's cat thing. You've got to open the box up to see if your cat is dead.
Sorry, Els. Dead cats. We shouldn't have gone there, should we?
No.
Sorry, Rufus. Okay. We've been really negative so far, haven't we, Craig? We've told about data skew, data pollution, shitty developers. Oh. Right, we're going to do the good news now. Data enrichment. Now, Craig, is there such a thing as plug-and-play analytics?
Out of the box? No.
Thank you, Seymour Harvard, for this one. Data quality is not acquired. You've got to earn your data quality. Now, what is Google Analytics? It's brilliant. Was it 63 million websites are now using Google Analytics? It's a free tool. But essentially, it's one size fits all, right? And it doesn't matter whether it's Google Analytics, it's any analytics system. You've got to take that and you've got to fit it to how your business or product actually works. And we're talking about customizing. We're talking about tweaking. We're talking enhancing. When you get all that, you get enriched data. And Tim covered some of this earlier, and Tim was talking about it was how much extra data can you get to Google Analytics around your business?
According to Google's own stats, over 50% of the websites out there are plain vanilla. They're just basic tag, no customization, no additional events, no tuning, none of the idiosyncratic business signals I was talking about earlier on. So over half of the setups out there are people who think that out of the box is going to work, right? And it's not. Okay?
But I don't think that's anyone in this room, is it?
No,
they're
of course not.
So the question you've got to ask is, what can you do?
Got a year to sort it, right?
What can you do to capture the most important interactions and events that are part of the user journey? Now, Tim talked about the fact, by the way, how many people here have got 360? You're all very lucky.
Lucky.
Lucky you. The rest of us, most of the time, are on standard. As Tim said, you get 10 million hits. What's a hit to Google Analytics? It's a page view. It's an event. It's an e-commerce transaction. And a couple more, but those are the main ones. So, how many of you checked in Google Analytics how many hits you're using per month? Oh, come on. Is that just one? Only one of you?
Two.
Okay, two. Right. When you get this deck, go and visit. How many people have used Query Explorer? Query Explorer basically it's the GA's front-end UI to the API. It's a good place to start. You click on that link up there and you authenticate whichever client site you want to. And you will get a nice report down here which will show you 12 months worth of every hit you used for that month. Yep. In this case, this client was using nearly 6 million hits per month. This is also a brilliant early warning system because I know this client should not be using 6 million based on the number of sessions they have per month. So get the total for your busiest month and subtract that from 10 million. And then divide that figure by the number of sessions for that month. And that will tell you how many additional events you could be firing into Google Analytics. Use that 10 million. And obviously, take Tim's presentation as a starting point.
What's the limit on the number of events you can fire per session?
500.
Right, so some people are actually pushing way more than that in for some sessions on their site. It's not going to work for you.
And as Tim said in his presentation, when was the last time, how many people actually look at the events? The number of accounts we audit and we go, scroll depth. When was the last time any of you checked scroll depth? Don't know, the last agency set up. If you're not using it, take it away and do something better.
Use it or lose it.
So, we've nicked this one from Simo because it's brilliant. And it basically says, where can you enrich your analytics data? So at an interaction level, we're talking about clicks. We're talking about what are people typing, swiping, copying and pasting, highlighting. Not just time on site, but dwell time, time between two different tabs.
Seymour talked about this in some detail recently at a conference I was at, and said there's this fundamental problem. We talk about time on site. Time on site is an ass metric anyway, but if you investigate it and understand how it's built, you discover the problem. So someone's been looking at our page for 10 minutes. No, they haven't. It's in another fucking tab. They just have a tab open, right? So how do you actually record? So if you were a content site, you would want to know that the tab is actually active, right? And that they're doing stuff and scrolling on the page. So Seymour's got a range of techniques that you can use here to do an adjusted bounce rate and an adjusted time on site. So bounce rate, if someone comes to your site and then pisses off, right? You probably say, yeah, that's a bounce. But if someone comes, scrolls down 75% of the page, and it takes them 8 minutes to do that, do you measure that? Right? So if you're not measuring that interaction with the page, the thing is you're going to get three classes of people on a page. People who look at the page and piss off and don't do anything. People who do something further but don't go to another page. And then people who go to another page. Don't you want to know about the middle group? People who had interactions on the page. So unless you code for these interactions, unless you say, we want to know that people are actually looking at this page content rather than it just being off in a dormant tab, there are coding techniques here in terms of how you fire the triggers that will allow you to adjust these things to fit your kind of business.
Okay, just looking at the time here, Craig. I think we've slowed down too much. Okay, so you've got short-term goals. I'll call two people up. Miko, so I do read your stuff. Talks about friction points. Don't just record the short-term goals. Record the stuff, and as Tim said, that's going wrong on your site. What is the cost to your business? Your long-term goals, and you know what your long-term goals are. Also, what other qualitative data can you feed back into the analytics system to enrich your data set? Now, this is a great article from Seymour Harbour where he says there's 13 custom dimensions that you can basically put in via Google Tag Manager. These here, the hit timestamp, which is basically the time in milliseconds, the session ID, the GA client ID, and the user ID, if you've got it, are the four most useful things. Craig and I use it all the time for debugging, because we can look at the whole session and go, right, where has something gone wrong?
You don't know that you need this yet, but when you come to need it, you'll go, oh, shit, I should have put that on, but it's too late. Put it on now, and then later on you'll go, oh, thank goodness I put that on.
So this, again, is something that Tim covered in great depth. When we talk about enriching, we talk about two things. We talk about capturing the contents on the page. So what has been rendered out into the HTML that you can capture? Tim said data layer, Google Tag Manager makes it really simple. Let's be honest, you still need a developer to generate a data layer. Now, and then you need to make a decision, do you store that in a custom dimensional event? Now, thank you, Carl, for the introduction, because this should come as no surprise at what I spend my time looking at. And trying to persuade my wife that I really need this. It's like a really important thing. So, at the top, that's what, by default, is going to be recorded into Google Analytics, the URL. I get a stock code, and I get there it is. But what would be really handy to push is, what category is that in? Not just category, but the subcategory. What's the stock code? What was the price it's on now, and what was the price it was on previously? How many reviews were on there? Is it in stock? And then we talk about capturing, once we've got that information, and I can contextualize those ones, so they can say, right, last month, did we see an increase in ice cream makers, or freezers, or whatever it is? It's giving people more information. Then we have to decide, how are people actually interacting with the page? Now, we work with a British retailer called M&M Direct, and they, over the last 2 years into their 360, have captured every single click. And when I say every click, anything that's clickable goes in there. And they're now using BigQuery machine learning models to basically build a propensity to purchase model. Now, the reason they can do this is because they captured all that data. Now, in 2 slides' time, we're going to talk about how important it is to create a proper event taxonomy, and it's something Tim touched on. Again, to really understand the event taxonomy has to be customized to your business. Craig and I can help you, but you really know how that works. So, back to the ice cream machine again. I really want this. So, we've got these 3 clicks down the bottom. Did they watch the video that we spent a fortune making? Are they going to share it with their friends? Yes, I must share on Facebook with Carl that I want this ice cream machine. And what do you think, Carl? I want to zoom in. Hey, there's a carousel. Oh, look, there's another carousel. They really like these carousels. Now, this one's really useful. How many people here work for a bricks and mortar or a retail operation? Okay, if you've got any clients who do, lots of these guys, Lakeland, have 57 stores in the UK. So how many people look at this and then find their nearest store? Unless you're tracking it, you just don't know. You don't know which products are generating more store visits. And now, how many people actually took the time and effort to read the reviews? Most importantly, how many people added it to the basket? So, do you want to talk about the grammar event tracking, Craig?
Yeah, let's mention this one. There's a really good article that Carmen Marderos has written, but this is a really important thing. Most of the time when we look at event tracking data in client websites, our first thought is, this event tracking data is total ass, right? And it doesn't really tell me what I'm looking for. What I wanted was an English human readable version. And really, if we think about the grammar of event tracking, right? We have a verb, an object, and a context, right? Something is done with an object within a particular context. So, someone clicks the navigation for About Us, or that views product 11234, or clicks that promotion, or applies a filter, or views the basket. But what this setup is about here, and it's something Charles and I are going to work on in the next few weeks, is give you a complete event taxonomy that makes sense when you look at an events flow report and also for later analysis. So put your verb in the action, put your context in the category, and put your object in the label.
Now, as you saw from Tim's presentation, Tim out of anybody stuffs an awful lot into an event because it's really useful. Yep.
Into the label, yeah.
You have 500 characters. Don't put view PDF, put the whole title, put the stop code in, put as much as you want in here. And Carmen's one, and there's a link in the deck, it's really worth reading how she's broken this down of all the information that you can push into those events. But it has to make sense and it has to be consistent. Because if it's not consistent, you're going to find your reports don't make any sense. Tips and resources.
Thank you, sir. Data models are one of the most important parts of our work, and really to understand how to grow a business means that you have to understand it in the first place. And every site, every product has gearing inside it like this. We have traffic flows in there that's multiplied, or we have that conversion rate that makes it smaller. But when people say to us, help, the dashboard isn't saying the right things. It's like someone saying, help repair my watch. It's not showing the correct time. So in order to fix the problem, we have to look inside. And one of the things that we use to reduce the infernal complexity of businesses is to use simple hackable models to extract the data. And I've got a couple of little examples here. First of all, this video is, we've saved over £100 million in annualized, that's annually for businesses, by finding device bugs within their website that they didn't know about and customers haven't called up about, And there's an excellent example here of that we found recently. One thing that we do is we look at intent groups. So can we figure out what people are after when they come to the website and then work out, put those in groups and then work out their kind of conversion rate so we get mini funnels. But one of the models we look at is yield by landing page type. So we say, what contribution do these template types make to the bottom line of the business? And the first thing when we ran this was, holy fuck, why is the product page converting at an insanely small value compared to any of these other pages? Could be because the product page is crap, but we then segmented the data and found it was only touch devices that were impacted. And what it was the product image. When you're scrolling on mobile and there's a map in the middle of the page and you can't scroll anymore because it just moves the map inside it and it really pisses you off and wastes your time? It's like that, but for the product image. These guys' average order value is £4,800, right? Because it's really expensive jewelry. So the problem is that as soon as they fixed that bug by isolating it here and checking it, it's 7 times the conversion figure, right? It's £1.3 million a month in extra money that was flowing within 2 days of fixing this.
I think the really good point here is the fact that this doesn't tell us what the issue was. Analytics would never have told us, but it tells us where to start looking.
That's why qual and quant should fall in love and run away and live together happily ever after, because they go together, right? The quant tells you the how, big, and the where. It doesn't tell you fucking why. You need to figure that out using integration with other tools. But you can also do intent. There was an optician site that said to us, oh, our stuff is really complicated, but it wasn't. Like 70% was store shit, we've got some eye shit, and we've got some hearing shit. So we put them in 3 pools, and then we do funnels. So people that looked at hearing shit, how many of those booked a hearing appointment? People that looked at eye shit, eye appointment. And then store shit, how many visited the store, filled in the contact form, or picked up the web trackable phone number. You've completely closed the loop, and you have 3 funnels to, it's 61,125 landing pages with different URLs. But it actually boils down to 3 things, right? And that's how simple intent models are. Another good one is funnel head drivers. Have you ever looked at the funnel head, where all the money comes from that goes into the funnel head? Here's one site I sketched out. There are 3 main templates, right? These PPC landing pages on the right, there were 3 templates in those. So we have 6 pages that are driving 94% of the entire fucking business for this client. And the way to make more money is to have more links into the funnel head or make these pages convert better into the funnel. It's pretty simple when you look at a simple model. You reduce the complexity. And here's one where we massively segment. It's called the dimensional funnel. We go to the Google API, pick up traffic, behavior, e-commerce, sales data, and then stuff on the funnel. But then we get that split by country, by iPhone model, by different operating systems. And we look along the grid for anomalies. And those anomalies, hopefully, will lead to soluble problems. This one little difference in the booking for tablet led us to investigate a problem on a travel site that was causing an £800,000 loss a month. It's all fixed now, it's working, but it was a clue. It wasn't the answer, but it was a clue where to start. And one thing that I would say to you, one really useful thing is when you're building models like this and you're sort of pulling data out of Google Analytics, do it on paper. Don't look at Google Analytics. Sketch the model you want to see inside your head, and you can then try and actually apply that to the data that you've seen in the walkthrough in the audit, and it will, at least if you're articulating what you want, you can try and make sure that's what you get out of the data. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you, Craig. Right. You saw me earlier. Got a bit excited, early warning systems, automation. Because this saves me so much time every day. So, the obvious. When and why should you automate? Right. Craig and I had a bit of discussion about this. I say, if you have to run a report more than once and it takes you more than 2 minutes, you automate it. Craig was like, it should be 7 or 8. I was going, no, Craig, we can do this really quickly. Yep. So, why do you automate? I know this is a statement the obvious, because it gets you to the data quicker. It basically gives you more time. Now, Craig and I have a concept which we call data noodling, which allows us to spend time looking at data. That's how we found out a way to automate the site and find headless bots. And that was purely because we got the data out of analytics quicker. Now, give you a quick example. When we talked about data skews, we talked about exporting all the URLs that have a query string in them. Now, I do this, and it takes me 2 minutes, and this is on really large sites. If you want to do it in GA today, this is what you need to do. Log in. Let's go to behavior. Or let's go to more pages. Let's go up there, put our regex in, and then wait for the progress bar to spin round and round and round and round. Oh, brilliant. Oh, look, I've got 6,687 URLs. So I'll have to go to the drop-down, get the first 5,000, export, get the next 2,000, export it again, merge the database, or I'm off making a cup of coffee. When I come back, it's all inside my Excel spreadsheet, because the next thing my Excel spreadsheet has done is basically worked out what all the different query strings are and has run the calculations on what are the most used. Now, that took me 2 hours to build. Yep, 2 hours. It saved me days doing this. And all I'm doing is I'm taking, as I said, I can't code. I genuinely can't code. All I've done is I've taken what's in here and replicated it. Okay, so these are things that we automate. It's not daily. We'll do it weekly. Yep. Yeah. But some of these we do daily. So we laugh because Craig says it's my famous 15-minute device model. No, I can make it 3, Craig. I can make this 3. Yep. So these are things when we take on a new client, we're going to look at bounce layer analysis, DOM timings, the most navigated to page, which is annoyingly the report that's not in GA, which says give me my page views and take away landing pages, and that tells me all the pages people navigated to. So which is the content people came looking to on your site. Exporting personal identifier information, query strings, device heights. Now, how many people here have got an internal site search on their site? Yep. When was the last time you did any analysis of the search terms? We've built something that allows us to classify those search terms. Okay. These are all the different automated e-commerce models that we have built for different clients. Not each one applies to each one.
If you want to find out about them, ask us afterwards.
Yes, for beer or drinks. How do I automate stuff? This is the important stuff. As I've said, take a look at Analytics Edge or Supermetrics. They both have 3 30-day trials. Yep, try it. It will change your life. If you don't want to pay, get yourself the Google Analytics spreadsheet add-on. It's not as good as the other stuff because those 2 allow you to do the transformation. Your lucky 360 users, put your data into BigQuery. Data Studio, it's automatic reporting. Or even if you're just emailing reports. And there is 1, 2, 3, 4. You see how serious we are about automation? What's that? 6 slides. Greg, I got the nod from you.
Even some stuff from our heads in there. Seymour talks about this. Data ownership is weak. Whose fault is it that the analytics isn't set up? And it's stuff like this, ugly and ineffective hacks to get tracking working. It's either done at the last minute or it's fixed afterwards. And this is the kind of shit we're talking about. Oh, we've got the new funnel live, but we completely deprioritized the funnel tracking. So everyone's saying, our new funnel doesn't work. We have no idea why. Why don't we have tracking? Oh, that's because it's not coming for another 4 fucking weeks. So you can't actually fix the problems you're trying to track and build and get your product out because these 2 are decoupled. It's often seen as a bolt-on doing this data work, but that's because it's a symptom of data being treated as a project outcome. And if you're really interested in integrating analytics, what Andre was talking about earlier on, all these things that we do with products have to be integrated with the way that you're working. So if you want to do analytics in Agile, this is one of the most important slides that Seymour says here, that developed features are trackable. Like, you must make sure that something is not done unless someone's thought about and implemented tracking where it's required. So data ownership really kills outcomes. Your feature is not done, your story is not done unless data is actually there. Last but not least, a huge weakness for most of our clients is investment. Few companies even check if people, can your people at your company use Google Analytics? We have no fucking idea. We've sent them on training courses, but we never actually validated that. So training people to be better at their job using data, there's this fallacy that if we train people in analytics, they'll leave the company. That's because your company is a shit place to work, and if the only discriminating factor is how much money they pay you, they'll go somewhere else that it's shit to work, but pays them £10,000 more. Okay, you can't compete on that, so compete on a better workplace. And actually training them makes it a more rewarding thing to do this. They will actually become happier and more fulfilled because they're doing more analysis and less report monkey work for you. So, this is about actually encouraging people to stay at your company by investing in them. You know, you wouldn't hire a mechanic for Ferrari if you're not giving them engine training on the telemetry system. So you need to back this shit up with actual training. The problem is that most people say, oh, I know how to use Google Analytics, but actually what they mean is they know how to use the knife and the corkscrew and maybe the toothpick, right? But all that other shit, oh, don't look at any of that other shit, looks really complicated. So you're carrying this really expensive tool around, you've invested loads in it, and nobody can fucking use anything apart from a couple of features and functions. But investment is about other stuff. Get an audit, make tracking part of every project. My thing to people is, you should be spending at least 5% of all your developer time on analytics tracking. If you're not, then you've got a problem. So investment is data collection, training, fixing stuff, automating, enrichment, investing in tracking tools, all the stuff that I've covered today. It's like writing a love note to yourself. Dear Craig, I thought you would love clean data next year, so I fixed all the shit in your analytics system so that you will feel great, right? And you'll be looking back on that thinking, I'm so happy I did that. So don't forget about investing in tech and dev as well. If you actually help tech and dev to deliver analytics reliably without risk and effort, they will love you. And if you help them to solve problems that they have, then they will be more likely to get your analytics shit done and live on the site.
But so the one thing...
One 5-minute video we can share about explaining the data layer, we just send that to...
Because what tends to happen is we say we want a data layer. People go, I don't know what a data layer is, and I've got so much to do. So I built, and everybody will laugh when you see this, it is the crappiest HTML site, but it shows the data layer firing, and there's a video. And I go, watch the video before you read the brief. And they go, oh, I get this now. This is far simpler. I just assumed you were a marketing bloke who was going to tell me to put tags on the site. I get it.
So invest in this relationship. They're not your delivery bitch, right? They're about actually getting stuff done in a collaborative fashion. Trust them, work with them, and understand their problems, and they'll help you solve yours, right? It's a sympathy thing, definitely. So to summarize today, we've been from the dark side, right? The shit that Charles and I have to wade through every week with our clients to really ask data, but we've also talked about the sunny upland. So, you know, the things that we've done that have actually transformed people, and that's particularly around getting people to having clean data, well audited, but then adding more to it. So really, the whole path to analytics success, if you reverse engineer it, involves having all of these things in your strategic analytics plan. If you've got this stuff in there, then you're actually building out a little bridge into a better future for yourself. You're laying out the planks in front of you that are going to take you to where the grass is actually greener. So thank you very much for your time today.
You've been a good audience.
Please come and ask us a question.